Well, a guy finally has time to get back to work on the old shop truck here. This is a 1935 Ford truck. It's got fiberglass fenders and running boards, an all-steel body otherwise that's in relatively good shape considering the age. In the rear, it's now got a 4-link bags, and I managed to squeeze in this very used 302 automatic transmission with the help of a homemade motor mount and cross member, and we've got headers and exhaust fit in here as well. Pretty much all the ingredients to keep going forward, getting this V8 swap done. The problem is this engine is, well, warmed over or boat anchor at best. So we're gonna do a rebuild right here in the shop, and I'm gonna show you guys how you can do it at home as well. Now, if we're gonna do this on a budget, we've gotta save as many pieces as possible. So first step is yanking this junk out. We're gonna tear it all the way down. We're gonna disassemble the heads completely. Look at the valves, the valve seats, and obviously the heads themselves. Set them aside, inspect the crankshaft, the connecting rods, and the pistons. We need all that. How do we know if they're good? I'll show you. And then of course the block itself. We're gonna go really in depth. We're gonna get the dial bore gauge out, and I'm gonna show you guys how to tell if your block is tapered, out of round, or oversized, so you know if you have to take it to a machine shop, or if you could just dingle ball it right here and throw it together on a budget. Okay, now I guess the work starts. Let's get it out. So some of you may remember this engine came out of a 1978 Lincoln Versailles, this is. And it ran, but it wasn't anything to write home about. But I do know that it wasn't overheating. I think it maintained pretty decent oil pressure. So I feel like, what is going on here? Never seen such a, okay, let me put this over here. Oh, it's coming apart in the middle. Mickey Mouse operation. Anyway, I feel like this is a pretty good engine to go ahead and try rebuild, but we may find some surprises. All right, I got to get this grill shell off, do some things, get the exhaust disconnected, and then we can get it out. My old boots finally gave up on me. I was new boot goofing yesterday, and I lost count on how many blisters I got on my feet. So I'm in these sneakers. Boop, boop. Let me tell you something. You could sneak. They're quiet. I ain't kidding. Okay. I got some hardware loosely placed in here. We took this to the Hot Rod Power Tour, Nashville stop, so some of y'all could see it, or the progress, I should say. But from experience, the engine comes out a lot easier with this out, and we don't want to damage this grill. They are getting hard to find. I might need a ranch dressing here. Oh, there we go. Oh, losing hardware. There was discussion about doing wiring first or the engine. I decided to do the engine first because that way we can go ahead and wire in all the sensors, the ignition, and everything else with it in one shot, and we're not going back and forth. What's going on here? Friction fit. Haven't finished moving my battery rack yet. Okay. Boop. Boop, 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 boop. So here's that little 302 tucked in here. It's again, it's a 1978, and it's got the same auto magical transmission behind it, but I had some guy missing a kneecap and a woodshed rebuild that for me. I think it was $400. Should work fine, okay? We'll have to put a Torque-Laser converter in it though at some point. My buddy Chad from Volunteer Muffler and Performance in Cookeville actually came down and helped me get exhaust in this, so I wanted to get all that mocked up before we got too far. And there's the mufflers back here. We got that painted all flat black, kind of hide it back here. All the hangers and everything is in. So now a guy's got to disco that. We'll just knock these bolts out right here at the collector flange. This one's going to be a little more tight. We have the notch into that frame, and that's another project. Once this engine comes out, I've got to clean that up, support it somehow, put some gussets in there, and I also need to fix this firewall before we go any farther. It is flimsy at best. It's a very thin sheet. There's no supports at all. And that was another reason I wanted to get this engine out and build this first, is before it goes back in, we got a lot of cleaning and welding and grinding and supporting and painting and stuff to do before this goes in and we get to the wiring. Then we just knock these bolts out, hook the cherry picker on it, yank it out of there. I think we'll get a little more room under here. I'll probably have to slide under to get the bottom collector bolts. I do imagine in my head that that's going to be the case. Okay, reminder to add oil to that jack. Perfect, I'll never do that. 10-4. And then, can a guy just, okay, oh, remember the cherry picker though. Let's go way out here. Really make it sketchy. In case I get super lazy and don't want to take these down. And then we just slide that cherry picker right in here. Maybe tape measure. Not going to be wide enough. Perfect. Death shake test. Good enough. Almost ripped the fender off. Check. You know, one of the more, some would say annoying, my feet are light today. I feel like going for a jog. Nope, that'll never happen. Of building a vehicle is you got to take apart and put back in and fit things a half dozen times. And I ain't even kidding you. But as that one band says, Yellowstone Park or whatever they are, in the end, it doesn't even matter. Well, I mean, it does, because then everything like fits or whatever. But it's just nice to know going into it, hey, this should slide right back in there. I had it in there once. It should go in again. I see I've torqued these to 7,000 foot-pounds. So that was unnecessary, and these will never come out now. Okay. Goodness gracious. What was I doing? I'll tell you what I was doing. It rhymes with wobble pops and impact. I can't believe this. I'm looking right at it. I'm trying to get the collector bolts off, and they are just smoked on here. They got so hot going in, they welded themselves somehow to something. I don't know what. Oh, for heaven's sake. Got to ease the picker of cherries in here. The old pushrod puller. Here's a trick for you. Open the valve. Boop. Lift this thing all the way up. Get her up in the air. And then close that valve. Boop. Save you about 74,000 pumps. Okay. As one expected, jack stands are in the way. I can't remember if this will go under the truck or if we gotta have it lifted. It's been a couple months. It might go. It'd be fun to take this on power tour next year. It's not gonna go, but Can a guy double up on some equipment here? I don't think we need much. There we go. Whoa, 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 whoa. Come on, now, let's get out of here. We got stuff to do. We got a lot of work left. We just barely started. Look at that bolt just slide right out. It's beautiful fit, man. What about this side? Is it going to be that easy? Oh, you betcha. Oh, is it going to come out with the header on? No. Oh, you betcha. Okay. This might be the easiest engine removal I've ever done in my life. Yep. Wow, by golly. Oh, I gotta find an engine stand. I think they all got engines on them. Whoop! Up! Look out! Ha! There we go. Garbage hook to junk. Perfect. That's what we need. We got more mice, or is that existing? I'm not sure. I didn't clean this up, I just jammed it right in there. Okay, now that we got this stuff out here, a couple things worth mentioning before we just start tearing into this. Over the years, I have built, I couldn't even tell you, dozens and dozens and dozens of engines. And luckily enough, they're all still running. They all run great. I've never lost one. And I've also never flattened a camshaft. I've never lost a camshaft. A lot of that is luck, a lot of that's material. And the reason I bring both of those things up is, A, I've actually, out of all the engines I've built, never built a Ford 302, ever. So I'm gonna be stumbling through this with you. Additionally, the reason I mentioned the camshaft is, I'm not going to take a gamble on purchasing a new hydraulic flat tappet at this point. They're going down left and right, okay? So I'm gonna retire on hydraulic flat tappets, undefeated. But the cool thing is, we're gonna be doing a roller camshaft conversion on this 302 and turn this into a roller motor. There's some additional work there, and we gotta put a spider in and things like that. Now, that doesn't mean for you at home that just wanna put rings and some bearings and maybe some valve seals in, can't reuse a camshaft. You certainly can if it's in good shape. Save the money. But I want a little bit of sound and a little bit of pep, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a camshaft in this thing. I've got some other parts back here. Most of it is the camshaft, lifters, push rods, timing chain. It's a comp kit, basically. And then the bearings and rings, it's just sealed power. I got them off the Jungle website for less than a couple liters of cola. I got a new starter we're gonna put in it. No sense in, oh, I don't have a starter. That explains that. And then I'm gonna run a Petronix ignition because I don't wanna have the never spark system up on the firewall. I don't wanna replace that every 52 miles or every time I fill up. So we're gonna put a single wire Petronix in this and get a little bit more accurate timing, simplify the system and so forth. And then it's just sparkulator wires if you'll make it happen, or we'll throw a little holly on it. Keep it very simple. I also have a performance intake. You don't have to do that at home. And that's really it, guys. Nothing super fancy. Might throw some chrome valve covers on it or something. You know, and then we could say, yeah, she's a 749er stroker. Pulls the rear tires off the ground, front tires off the ground in third gear, you know, because it's got chrome or whatever. That didn't make any sense. Okay, so now just set this on the ground, get the transmission separated. I'm pretty sure I didn't put a torque converter. I did, no idea why. Why did I do that? Oh no, I didn't. It's just got the flex plate on it. Then we'll start tearing this down. Yep. What is this on? Come on. There we go. tech tip, get yourself a paint cup. Off. And let's just grab this and throw it somewhere. Over here. Okay, we got her up in the air. Now I'm gonna be doing a bunch of goofy precautionary stuff as I'm tearing this engine down because again, never done this one. Some of you Ford guys might be laughing at me, but this is just how I learn and a process that I have. A lot of it is just indications, marking, and reference points. So when you go to put this thing back together, you're not going, well, how does this work and that? And you're guessing. When you start guessing, you're gonna start losing confidence. If you lose confidence, you're never gonna finish it. So I'm here looking at the flex plate already going, well, it's not like a Chevrolet where they have an easy dowel pin. And they do that because there's literally no wrong way to put a flex plate or flywheel on. You can't mess it up. But here I don't have that. And I also see that it is weighted. So apparently this has to go on exactly like that. So I'm just gonna take a marker and draw a line that goes from the flex plate onto the back of the crank. So when I go to put this back on, I know exactly where it goes. Now I gotta be careful if we get heavy with the paint. I might have to come in here with a little scriber or something and just make a mark on that so I know where it goes. All right. These had Teflon on them or some sort of Loctite. Boy, that's loud. Okay, so this actually does have a mark as well as on the crank, but there's no dowel. But that'll also give us an indication there. Can't forget the spacer plate, goofy thing Ford did. Set this with the trans. So here we're looking at the back of the engine. This is pretty cool. I always like seeing this stuff. We got some original markings from the factory back here. We got sensorage down in the crankalizer. This is that extra hole here I was talking about. And down here we can see it there. So we'll be able to decipher that if our mark goes away, I guess. One thing worth looking at is some engines have freeze plugs back here, which is these guys right here, and they're often overlooked. And those are the most terrible ones to go because when you start leaking coolant back here, guess what? You're dropping your transmission or you're pulling your engine to repair it. Don't have that in this case. This is the back of the camshaft here. All of this looks dandy. So I don't think we're gonna have any issues there. Let's get these headers off. And then I think we're gonna pressure wash this. So I'm actually going to get a separate paint cup for the engine bolts now. Any hardware coming off of here. And I've got a second table set up for parts that are coming off during the disassembly. Try to keep things semi-organized, even if it's just a pile on your garage floor. Have a good pile, bad pile, new parts pile, stuff that came off pile, and undoubtedly the I don't know what this is pile. We all got those. Uh-oh. I gotta run in and get some kitty litter. It's about to get messy in here. Great. Super. I wonder what Mark Chestnut's doing today. I am going to take this crossover pipe off. These always rot and leak and do nothing. So we're going to block that. So let me rip these off really quick. Well, I got her in a pretty good position now where we can go pressure wash this thing. And we're not going to be taping anything off or doing any of that. It really doesn't matter if I get water in the intake or in the crankcase or any of that. We're going to blow it all apart anyway. We just want to get, you know, some of this dirt and grime off. It doesn't need to be surgery center clean. You know, I've rebuilt these with water dripping through a roof, standing on hay and dirt everywhere, and it's just fine. But there's no sense in having a 1/2 inch of, you know, mouse nest and that stuff in here. Oh, just blow her off, clean her up a little bit, probably brake clean it, wire wheel it once we get it back in and do all that. Then we can start blowing this thing apart. I think what I'm going to do is find my pressure washer, hook that to the bib, drag 47 miles of hose up by the pole barn here, and then I'll go get the big tractor. I was moving hay this morning. It's got a bale spike on it, and we could just hook it in here with a chain and get this around there real quick like. Yeah, that ought to get it out of there. Oh, trapped all this cool air in here last night and it all goes away now. This went over the spike perfectly here. Now can a guy run one here, one there? Ha! I bet he could. Piece of cake. It's just a swangin', swangin'. All right, now I can reach this with all my hoses. We'll spray this down with some engine degreaser, and hey, if you've got some oven cleaner, that'll work too, but you gotta be careful because I can eat aluminum. It's gonna take all the stickers and stuff off. So pick your poison wisely. I'm gonna soak this down, let it sit while I'm getting the machine ready, and then we'll blast it off. Well, I'm going to be trying the rideable engine degreaser. Stuff's made for like semis and stuff, so I'm hoping it'll eat this stuff right off of here. Soak this down, let it sit, and then I got at least half hour rolling hoses out, getting the pressure washer fired up. I'm sure it'll need a carb clean, it'll be out of gas, and you know, the usual. Oh yeah, this is eating stuff off right away. Look at that. It's like I'm painting the valve cover essentially. Wonder if I should just got 3 cams. Should I put it all on or just put one on and wait? So the weed control, that's what we're doing. Let's see a good weed though. And try that. Here, there. Again, we're not worried about getting liquids or greaser or anything inside the engine. We're tearing it all apart today anyway. All of it's going to be... Whoa, is that what it's supposed to do? What happened? That was really foamy. Huh. Weird. Well, guys got her sprayed down pretty good. The rest of it we'll just have to get in the shop once we start tearing it down a little bit. Like I say, some wire wheel and brake clean goes a long way, but gonna go ahead and let that dry off. I'll clean up my mess here and then we'll haul it back inside. Been sitting quite a while. Whatever's left is gonna be tough to get off. Might take a wire wheel, but I'm gonna sting it with some brake clean just to make sure. Get into hard to reach areas with the straw. Try to get some of this in your retina if you can. And when you spray it, make sure your mouth is wide open as well. Well, the guy has successfully washed his retinas down, so let's go ahead and get this into the shop now. And I'm gonna dump some kitty litter down, clean up the floor, and snag this onto an engine stand. And then we're gonna start tearing it down. Oh, there's Theo. Oh, that's Caprice actually. Beeping back. Special junk delivery. Let's see if I can set this down. Quit swinging. Easy. Easy. Scrape. Touchdown. Tip over. Stay up. Stay up now. No. Oh, okay. Come unhooked. That's fine. Just stay there. I like it. I like what you're doing there. Oh no! We broke a sparkulator. Oh well. I got more junk ones around here. Well, we got another small block Ford doing what they do best. Laying over dead. Easy, easy. Okay. Let's see if we can get it back up. Just clean this mess up, and now I got more. Oh, I broke all the sparkulators. Well, I was getting ready to bolt up the engine stand here, and good old Ford, you know, make everything difficult and hard for anyone to work on it. Instead of just your standard 3/8, they run 7/16 bolts back here. You need them on a C4. This 200 horsepower is gonna rip this bell housing right off unless you run 7/16. Well, guess what? I ain't got 3.5 inch 7/16. So now we're running all thread. I'm gonna have to cut that off into pieces and put washers and nuts on to get the dog and pony show. Dog and pony. All right. There we go. I like to mount this up on the engine first. And once this is on the engine, then I'll fandangle this unit into my stand. It just seems to be a lot easier than trying to hold the engine a certain way or lift the stand up with your foot and run bolts in and do all that stuff. So I'm gonna make a mark, hack this off, and I should be able to repeat that however many 55 times or whatever they got in this here to hold all this torque, and then get this mounted. Wow, they really, I feel like it's gonna come out the water pump here. I keep turning this. Precision. Okay, or would it be easier just to screw all these in? I must have had a Ford on this last. What did I have on this? I think it was a Ford 300. Okay, good enough. Boom. Diablo! The blade of choice. I don't think that's I don't think that's a saying, actually. Well, you get the gist. Let me do this 37 more times. Well, we got her up on the engine stand, locked in, ready to go. Let's start tearing into this thing. Basically, all of the accessories need to come off, fuel lines, wiring, vacuum hoses, doodads and whatnots. We're gonna take the lightning whirler off. We're gonna get the valve covers off, the water pump, the pulleys, the front cover, the intake, basically get us down to the Valvetrain. Then I'm gonna stop there and we're gonna have a discussion about dropping your wrench and never seeing it again. I found it, seeing it again. If you're gonna keep your camshaft, what you need to do to make sure you're in good shape putting it back in. We're also going to, once we pull that out, inspect the cam and lifters and just use this as an example of how does a guy know if what he's got is good? Why, this is locked in there. There we go. A little bit of water on that. Ain't the least bit worried. Should we start on the front here? 54,000 different bolts and lengths, studs. Why? Why are you doing that? Why does that have to happen? This is an original hose clamp. That's pretty cool. The old castle kind. So was this one. So the thermostat bypass has never been changed. Pretty neat. I want to say this engine had 78,000 miles. Could be wrong. If you remember from the Lincoln Versailles video. Bleep bloop it down there. I don't know. Let us know what's going on here. And then we can see if it was 78 and we start tearing into this, how it fared with that kind of mileage. I need to get a trash can over here. Another original style hose clamp with what appears to be the original hose. It's got some markings on it. Come on now. Everything's gonna be a fight. All right, well, I'm gonna get after this thing, start tearing into it, okay? Okay. Well, the guy's got the first layer of the onion peeled back here, and we can start to look at the condition of this engine and what we've got going on here. Let's start in the front here. Timing chain, actually a little bit better than I thought it would be. It is sloppy, I'll give you that. But the nylon plastic coated gear is in relatively good condition. Pretty much every make, well, I shouldn't say every make, a lot of makes did this in the 70s to try to quiet down the engines. And what ended up happening over time is these crack and chip and fall apart, and your timing chain will essentially jump. This is the fuel pump centric here. So as that rod comes in, as this comes off center, that's what actually levers the fuel pump there. We've got a different timing set we're going to put on this, so we're not too worried about that. Now we can look in here. These are kind of just the pedestal mount rockers. So you just torquelate these down, good to go. There is a lot of sludge in this motor for being, I think, 70,000-ish. miles. This is just oil from the 70s. Technology has increased quite a bit. Pretty much any oil today is better than what they had back then. Let me show you the valve covers. Look at that. That's 1/4 inch thick. So probably didn't have the oil changed often at all. So I wonder if that'll translate down to the bearings. So the next step here is going to be getting the rockers off, and we don't have to keep track of where these go. We're going to leave the push rods in there. Once I get all the rockers off, we'll pause, we'll come back again and talk about strategy. I've got a big 5-gallon bucket of carb cleaner I'll show you in a second. I'm going to drop all these small parts and hardware into that, and while we're going through this engine and doing our stuff, it's going to be cooking and cleaning. So when we go for reassembly, it's all going to be nice. So this is what I got here is the old Barrowman. It's a carburetor and parts cleaner bucket. You don't have to use this. You can use just a bucket of diesel or gas if you want, but I'm doing a carburetor, seems like every single week. Mazel. So all we got to do is throw the rockers and hardware into this basket, run the elevator down, and it'll start cleaning while we're doing other stuff here. There we go. So here's what we got now. And just kind of looking at the valve springs. Doesn't appear to have any broken springs or anything like that. I don't remember any big misses on this thing. Push rods, of course, everything's very dirty, but I don't see any obviously bent push rods or anything like that. So that's good news. So let's talk about push rods for a minute. Again, if you're going to be reusing these, how do you tell if they're good? Well, these are typically pretty easy. First thing you want to do is clean them all up. You need all this varnish and oil residue and stuff off of here. You want them as clean as possible. Scotch-Brite pad, some gasoline again, or carb cleaner, brake cleaner. And then you're going to need a flat surface that you really trust. Not a concrete floor, maybe the top of a nice toolbox or something like that. And you're simply just going to roll this back and forth. That's an easy way. And if it's flopping around or a little bit different, that's one way to tell. Or you can do this. Gently chuck it in a drill. Now when you run this, it will become very, very evident if this puppy is bent. In this case, boop, green light, good to go. In this case, for this particular build, we're not going to be reusing the push rods, so I'm simply going to pull all of these out, set them to the side, but I'm not going to toss all of them. I'm going to keep one handy in case I need to measure these down the road. Now, again, if you're going to reuse the camshaft, you want to make sure that your push rod, your lifter, and your cam lobe all match. So when you pull these out, get a piece of cardboard out. Draw the engine or draw the head or put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Line all of these up because you're going to come back and set the lifters to its mate so that when you put the camshaft back in, you drop everything back in because that lifter has worked itself against that cam lobe. And these don't matter as much, but why not just put it back right where it came from? Okay, all right. So at this point, a guy's gonna go ahead and pop the timing chain off. I'm gonna wanna rotate this camshaft here in a minute to start pulling all these lifters out. And if I'm not turning the crank with it, well, it just makes it that much easier on a guy. And it wants to be stubborn, of course. Where's my remover 9000? Oh, that looks a little too serious. I could just cut this. There we go. Just had to really get after it. Yep, now I can rotate that cam freely. So I'm just going to grab the keyway on the camshaft here, and as I spin it around, you see the lifters coming up and down on their bores, and that is how we're going to get all of these lifters out. We're just going to grab them with a needle nose or a good old vice grip and plop them right out of there. Now again, if you're going to reuse these or plan on it, make sure you're marking where they're at. But we'll inspect them and see if these are any good along with the camshaft. All right, just like the dentist. Maybe, unless they're really worn in here. Come on. Now if you're going to be reusing these, you got to be more gentle than this. You don't want to score them up. But they can wear themselves into these bores like that one, and you might have to fight. We're going to be fighting. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted to do today. Wow. We are going to have a battle royale going on. Great. I'm not going to line these up because I'm not reusing it, but we'll still look at them. And if we have any bad cam lobes, I'm sure we'll find the bad lifter. Oh boy, they're stuck. So in this case, even if you were being gentle, I don't think you're going to get these lifters out if you're trying to reuse them. We've really got a ridge worn in this cam. Another stuck one. Let me fight this for a while and I'll come back to you soon. Well, sometime later, a guy's got the lifters out. It was a fight. You can see a big pry bar here. Yeah, this is a high mileage engine. High mileage. Instead of 78, it's definitely 178, as already evident. But anyway, I made the comment, I was scoring them up, well, you can't reuse these anymore, and I wanted to explain why. You might be thinking, why? All it does is go up and down on this bore, and as long as it moves, everything's groovy. See what I did there? Well, you are making grooves, and they're not the good kind. Actually, the way that lifters are designed, let me grab one. As these make a relationship with a cam lobe, the way they're machined is these will actually rotate in the bore. They spin when the engine's running. Okay? Same as piston rings. Piston rings also spin as the engine is running. And they do that for wear. That's how they're made. If this were to stay in the same spot, with the thrust angle and everything else, and just constant movement, heat buildup, these would wear out the bores very, very quickly. So these are machined to actually rotate, dissipate heat, evenly spread oil, and so forth. So if you've got an engine and it's running rough, or you suspect maybe you got a cam lobe going down, here's a really simple trick. Your push rod subsequently also rotates with your lifter there, right? So as the engine is turning over, this should be rotating in its bore. Take a paint marker and just draw a vertical line on here. You just pop the valve cover off. Here's all your push rods. Boop, 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 beep, beep, bop, bop, beep, 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 doop, boop, bop, my computer, right? You don't even have to fire it. Disconnect your lightning whirler. Turn over the engine, and these should be spinning when that engine rotates. If you've got one that's not spinning, it's stationary or stuck, you have a worn lifter, 99.23% 7%. percent of the time. There's a good chance it's worn. Okay, speaking of worn lifters, let's go look at our worn lifters out of this 302. So a hydraulic flat tappet lifter at a glance looks like a solid lifter. A solid lifter is essentially just this, but it's solid. There's no spring cup in here and there's no spring assembly on the inside. A hydraulic flat tappet has a hydraulic spring system here and the same flat tappet end. Now these are pretty simple to determine if they're bad or not. Use the light, look around them. That's just a smudge. If you see pitting, scoring, uneven colors, you've got a bad lifter. That one's pretty decent. Now this whole row here, I would label pretty decent. These are all worn, and I'll show you. Look in the center here. Let me get the light on it right there. See that? There's a dimple in the center. That's wear by the cam lobe. This one is even bigger. That goes all the way out to the outside. You can actually see the case of the lifter. Well, all of these are the same way. They're showing dimples all the way down. See that? Dimple, very worn, dimple, dimple, dimple. All of these here. Now, had we taken this apart, and I kept track of this, it would be interesting to see, because we have 8 and 8. I would guess that the intake lifters are the ones that are all bad. But it doesn't really matter, it's irrelevant. If you were trying to keep this lifter set, they are roached. And unfortunately, if the lifters are worn, your cam lobes are going to be worn. Most of the time, let's see if that holds true. We can really quickly pull the bump stick out of this thing and take a look at it and see what kind of shape this is in. Got a retainer plate here. It's kind of a nice feature. Cam thrust button or bearing will do the same thing on like a GM. Now, let's grab a hold of this thing. We do want to be careful because I had not planned on putting in cam bearings. Boy, she's gonna fight us. Let's see. That's not in. Pull this off. Okay. I'm just using a vice grip. You don't need an installation tool. Being very gentle again. We don't want to smack into these cam bearings with any of these lobes and chip them up. One more. There we go. Well, it's here. I'm looking at it. Nothing is wiped, but I'm going to take a closer look at it, see if I can find an evidence of this wear. We're looking for spots or speckles. That means the top layer of this casting, the protective coating, has worn down and we're deep into the casting itself. Uneven wear marks, evidence of heat, things like that. Let me wipe it down. We'll take a closer look. Where's my rag? So here's one. Already used. Perfect. Well, I've quickly went through here and I'm not seeing anything glaringly evident other than a couple of these lobes do have those spots or speckles right there. And that's telling us it's wearing away. But nothing as bad as that 350 we just torn down. This lobe is pretty well shot. But this is a really cool illustration. Rare to see. We were just talking about this, how these are machined so that this actually spins. Well, if you look at the gunk on these lobes, check this out. Right here. See, that's all this junk, and then it's machined metal. Well, that's because the lifter is riding on this side. Well, why would it do that? So this spins. See? And you can see that on all of them. all the way down. I don't know, science or whatever. So if you're in the let's use everything crew and throw some rings in it, well, you're gonna have to order a camshaft and some lifters. I would not personally throw this back in unless you're really, really in a crunch. You could maybe throw some lifters in, send it down the road, or get you to working back for another year or two. But you know, if you're looking for a nice, decent build, I would wait till another paycheck or go hawk a guitar or a power tool or something and get yourself a new cam and lifters. This stuff here, junk. Okay, it is time to go ahead and get these heads off and really see what we're working with down here. Before I crackleate these off, let's just check in on our rockers. If you're wondering if this stuff actually works. Whoa, look at that. Zero scrubbing. We'll let them cook a little more. Okay, if a guy is trying to make a list here of stuff you may need for your engine rebuild, you're going to want to pick up a pretty decent gasket kit. Felpro if you can swing it, otherwise just gasket stuff, you know. You're going to need some RTV obviously. You're going to need some assembly lube, you're going to need head gaskets, but again, if you get the whole rebuild kit, gasket kit, you should have all that. Valve cover, head gasket, timing chain, water pump, all of that stuff. We'll talk about assembly lube and that stuff here in a little bit. Where did my extension go? I just had it. We were using it, weren't we? Oh, for crying in the mud. Can't have nothing around here without losing. Is it over here now? Here's the wrong one. Anyway, where I was going is head bolts is another one of those. Unless you've got ARPs, which is unlikely because it's a stock motor, you can't reuse these. The tensile strength is gone. Once they're torqued, they're shot. Now, if you want to do a really sloppy rebuild, go ahead and reuse them. I don't know. It's not like I've ever done that before. Okay. Looks like shorts on the bottom, bigs on the top, kind of like big block Chevrolets. We're gonna have to do this again to the Cleveland on the Pantera. But we might go a little hotter on that one. You know what I mean? Goodness gracious. There we go. Why would they change that size? Why? Why would they do that? Is it this size? No. This is a little, I think it's AC bracket. Boop. Don't need that. Okay, the old Persuader 7000. Give her a crack. Let's give it a crack. Let's give it a crack now. Let's pop it open. Let's see what we got. Oh, it's ready to go. Ready to go now. Okay, looks good. Got some splish splash from Warshin, but all four are here. We'll take a look in just a second. I wonder if I could just hip it. Nope. Needs a persuade. Persuade. Persuasion. There it is. Yep, yep. All four are there. I'll be dipped. It's still a V8. Well, here we go. Bunch of carbon buildup, pretty typical. Now, before we get into the block and start talking about ring ridge, taper, out of round, oversized, all of that, I want to get this all the way apart. So let's spin it upside down, get the pan off. I don't believe I put an oil pump in it. We'll get the mains off, the connecting rods, drop the pistons out, pull the crank. We want to inspect all of this stuff, and then we'll probably end up at the block. Nailed it. Okay, so before I flip this over, I decided to do one more thing really quick. I think I'm going to clean up these pistons and get my punch set and just punch in the piston number before we flip this over. I don't know if this is going to have anything on the rod caps or the main caps or anything like that. And this is another example of me just trying to make sure that we could put this back together where it is. Pistons are very important. They're absolutely home to the cylinder that they're in, so we got to make sure. Now, Chrysler 1357, AMC 1357, Buick 1357, GM, everything 1357, Ford, got to be different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool. I'll go get my punches. So before we punch these, we got to clean them up a little bit, obviously, because we don't want to get that lost in translation when I do clean all these pistons, because we're going to do the same thing with the dunk tank. So I'm going to take a little wire wheel like this and just get after it. And it looks like this. Now I'm going to bring, this has a lot of depth to it when it's top dead center, just a low compression engine here. We're mainly getting the center, but while the piston's being held in here, we're going to go ahead and just go hog wild, clean up what we can. It doesn't really matter if we hit the cylinder wall there because the rings aren't even making contact. Look at all that coming off. That's a lot. So I'm going to keep moving. We'll rotate the engine here in a second, bring these up, clean all that up, brake clean, wipe it down, then we'll have a clean surface where we can knock a punch into these. Well, the guys got these cleaned up pretty good. I was able to get the piston a little bit farther up in the bore, rotating it over. Got them pretty well cleaned up. Doesn't have to be perfect for now, but building an engine's a lot like painting a car, fellers. 90% of it is cleaning, preparation, 5% of it's parts, the other 5% is cold snacks. You know what I mean? Okay, now I can take those punches and we're just going to knock our numbers in on the right side or the forward side. I guess that side would be left side. They do have a little notch in them as well, which is nice. Almost all manufacturers have that. A rectangle, a pin, a notch, an arrow, some indication that's telling you this is forward to the front of the block. I'm going to do the same with my punch, just so there's no confusion. The punch set I got, super cheap. I think I got it off the Jungle website. It's like a number and letter punch set. We'll just bang them in. Do 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 do, hitting engines with hammers. Pow, pow. How do I do this without rotating it every time? Well, that's pretty good. One. What's this one? Oh, I happen to grab two. I'll be dipped. Nice little two. Can we get that lucky again? What is this? I don't know what that is. It's a 6 or an 8. To be determined. What's this one? 5. Five, done. What's this one? There's our 3. How do you do 3s upside down? This way? Yeah, okay. What is this one? What do we got now? What is this? I think that's an N sign, but we'll use it as 8 because I think I lost my 8. Came out like an X. Well, we know that weird one is 8, 4. That'll finish off this side. It's subtle, but enough to, you know, if you really hook your peeper on it, you know what's going on. This is 7. So then questionable must have been 6. Is that what we're going with? There we go. So now if we look close, there's a 4, 3, 2, 1, etc. Now we're going to roll this over, get this oil pan off. First thing that's going to happen, actually, where's my drip pan? Right here. Green coolant's going to go flying everywhere. And then we can get the caps off. Take a look at the bearings, connecting rods, pistons. There we go. Okay. Boop, boop. We had to put that pan on to clear the Mustang 2 front end there. That's in. And I'm already missing some sockets. That's pretty good. That's the one we need. What is this thing? Where's my, is this it? I can't read anymore. Yeah, gotta go by feel. Only had a couple in here so we could mock it up. Okay. There's that. All right, these are the main caps are labeled, and it's just like GM except the pump's in the back. That one's obvious. And we've got a big 2, 3, 4, and a 5. No, we've got a 2, 3, and a 4, and an E/B. Why would you put 5? Okay, but rear main cap obvious, oil pump obvious, I guess. So let's do the rods. I don't see that. I'm going to clean these rods up, turn this motor over a couple times, see if there's anything blaringly evident. Of course, they got the Ford symbol on them. They're very proud of that. But what I want to see is some sort of numbers. We might have to smack these two. Just get it over with. Well, it was hard to see, so I hit it with the wire wheel, but we do have, I don't know, some half attempt Friday evening punchings on here. Kind of a 1 and then a 2 and a 2, 3 and a 3, 4 and a 4. So I think I'll get my 1 out, hit that one, and then I'll clean the other side and make sure we have, there should be, but I just want to find them and clean them up. So again, when we go to put this back together, it should be adult Legos, basically. Well, this side's even worse. There's the bottom swoop of a 5, nothing. 6 there, nothing there, nothing, and nothing. So I'll get the punches out again, clean this side up. Okay, they're all labeled up now, so we'll take some rod cap bolts off. Maybe. Come on now. pretty greased up. And then we'll give the stud a bonk. Cap's gonna come right off. Just like that. Woo. Well, okay. Got here just in time. Where can I set all these out so we can really look at them? Let me figure out a spot. And then I just gotta come through here, use my hammer handle, knock the pistons. I'll grab them, set them up, and find a box or a piece of wood or something. Well, all of the pistons are out. We got to get to the oil pump now. I went ahead and just set them up over here. Just kind of an example of how I like to lay my stuff out. We'll take a close look at those a little bit later, but spoiler, the rod bearings are shot. Let's see what the main bearings look like. The rod bearings look like trash went through them. I suspect these are going to be a lot of the similar condition. 2 bolts here. Get this guy off. Now we can get the impact on the main caps and pull this crankshaft out. This is a big piece. Your pistons, connecting rods, and crankshaft. It's a lot of money if you got to get into replacing those. And as long as you don't have to bore this thing over, which is why we're going to be looking at taper if they're ovaled out or oversized or damaged. As long as you don't have to bore it, you can reuse those pistons, as long as the pistons are in good shape, obviously, but typically they go hand in hand if they're busted up. Now, unlike head bolts, main cap bolts can be reused, and so can the nuts for your connecting rods. Don't lose them. We'll give these a tickle. Use the bolt as leverage. Work them out of their groove. Go. Oh boy. She was worse than we thought. Okay, now we should be able to pick this crank up. Nice and gentle. Here we go. Lots to talk about. People can tell you it's a low mileage car all they want, but the bread is in the pudding. Where's that bread pudding? The truth is in the Tic Tacs. Okay. All right. Well, it went ahead and be actually the following day afternoon. I got caught up in some property chores last night and just ran out of time. I was able to clean up, got the heads down here, cleaned them up a little bit, started on them anyway. Fighting these army worms. It's just, we're under attack, trying to save a hayfield or two. So we're out spraying and doing some other things, but we'll get back on the engine today. Here's where we're at. Block is pretty much where we left it, but I threw the heads down here and started spraying them off and looking at them just a little bit. Gonna go ahead and wire wheel the combustion side and the valves. We're going to go ahead and inspect the valves on these, and we're going to pull the springs off and everything else, and just look at these thoroughly and determine if these are good or if they need to go for a rebuild. So we're going to start at the top and work our way down. After we get through these, then we'll come back here, take a look at our pistons, our crank, all of the connecting rods, everything like that, and make sure we can reuse these pieces as well. And I got the rockers out of the cleaning solution last night. They look great. Let's go check on the main caps. I dunked those in. Oh yeah, they look much better. These were heavily caked. And while they're hanging there in the basket, we'll just mist. There you can see that nice clean cast color. There's the seal that's swelled up. Got the hardware nice and clean. And I threw the nuts to the connecting rods in there as well. Much better. So, come over here. Get out of the way. We're going to take a little cup wire brush and just clean up the surfaces of the valves and the combustion chambers while it's being held together here. When we get all these cleaned up, and then we'll start taking this apart. We're going to be looking for burnt or damaged valves. Take a look at the valve seats, see if we had any broken springs, which we shouldn't have. Again, I don't remember a bad miss, but it was a while ago. It was running-ish, but I'm telling you, and we're going to get there in a little bit, based on that block and the bearings I pulled out of this thing, it was a 300,000 mile motor easily. So we got to make sure these heads are good. All makes sense now. When we picked this car up, I was thinking, well, why would they park such a low mileage car, which is what we were told, the odometer said, for just a brake line? Well, now we know. The old timer's like, that puppy's got 275,000 miles on it. Let it sit, you know? Okay, yep, yeah. So far, no blatantly obvious damage, which is good. That's pretty good. And let's brake clean treatment that one more time. So kind of the first thing a guy's going to do is just a visual inspection here. And it's usually very obvious when these are burnt or broken. Burned, you usually see like a chip or a kind of an uneven edge, usually followed by a hairline crack or something like that. And these look good, and the other head is similar. And then we'll take a peek at the springs, and those are usually blatantly obvious as well if they're broke. They'll be stacked weird. Everything seems fine there as well. So now what we've got to do is go ahead and disassemble the head and get these valves out. We'll take a look at the seats, the valve stems themselves for excessive wear, things of that nature. We got some options as far as tools go. So we've got a few different tools here. I'm going to kind of show you a couple of them just so you have an idea, and then I'll show you the tool that I'm going to be using. There are several generic ones out there. You can actually just pick them up at your parts store. If you're doing this once, a cheap little $9 something like this could work. This isn't a studded head, so it doesn't have fixed studs or a press-in stud. So there are a couple that would work better with this particular head, but in this case, you could technically run a bolt in, and all you do is just pry this down, and it's going to depress the spring. Inside of each of these springs is a conical shaped spring keeper. It's just a V basically, or a cone, in two pieces. And when you depress that spring, you drop that keeper in, relax the spring, and it locks that spring in place. You have to reverse that to get these off. So you can pry on this, and it will depress that spring, fish out the keepers, slowly let it down, pull the spring off, valve drops. Another one is this. It's basically the same thing, but these are built more for like a studded head. You would screw this into the stud, and then when you're ready, you pull this lever and it depresses the spring. Same principle as that, just a little bit fancier. Boop, okay. Then you got the old school one, the old clampalizer. This would work better, although a little bit trickier to fish the keepers out. You actually grab the spring itself, like that. And then all you have to do is work this down, and it'll depress that spring, and then you just got to get like a dental pick or something in there, fish out those keepers. These will work fine. Might take you a little bit longer. Now, being I do so many rebuilds, and time is of the essence for me, I use this one by LSM Racing Products. It's not cheap, I'll be honest with you, but it is so fast. Literally, I will stand this block up, slide this in here, crank this down, keeper falls out of this, go backwards, spring comes off, onto the next. And that is how we're going to tackle the heads. So let's go ahead and break both these heads all the way down. And I'm going to throw the valves in the solution. Let me put these back first, get some gloves on, and we'll get at it. Okay, guys, got the tool on here. This side goes on the spring side. This side actually holds the valve. And all I have to do is just simply crank. There's my keeper. So here's the keeper right here. It's kind of stuck. There we go. Now when I bring this back, it's going to allow that spring to come all the way off. I usually like to do it in a tray like this or a Tupperware lid or something so you can keep track of all these parts, especially if you're going to be reusing all of this. Pull the spring off. Okay. Seals hard as a rock, as expected. Might have to brake clean that. Heavy residue on the other end. I got to clean up the stem probably to get that through. Sometimes you can work them back and forth. There we go. And we'll just set it like that, all in a set. On to the next. I want to get some brake clean so I can clean the stems while I have it depressed. That might help me. Now you can see how fast this one is. Again, there's nothing wrong with the other tools, but if you think you're going to find yourself doing this often, you may want to consider getting a better tool. Whew. Lots of gunk. right. You get the gist. Let me get through both heads quick, and then we'll start taking a look at what kind of shape, can a guy use any of this, is what I'm saying. Or do we got to get the Sawzall out? I mean, 5-angle axis machines. That's what I meant. No, I definitely meant Sawzall. So lots of carbon buildup, but the seats look fine physically. I wouldn't be afraid of reusing that head. Now the valves, tons of buildup. That's your typical high mileage unit right there. Woo! Pretty much all look the same. And of course your exhaust valves always look cleaner. They've got that hot heat coming through there. Now, I would clean this up and call it good. All this stuff needs cleaned up, but I'm going to be replacing these springs with my cam kit. So I'm going to clean these up for me, and we'll continue to clean these up. Now I could just take a soft brush in here, clean all this stuff out. I don't think we need to lap those. Actually, they look pretty good. Took the head gasket off just a second ago. We didn't have any issues with the head gasket anywhere. So these heads are decent. And you can see they stamped the year on them. Right there, 78. They're just carboned. Bad gas, bad oil. But it got us home. Pretty cool. So if you're not familiar, this is an umbrella style valve seal. And this is what keeps oil out of your combustion chamber, essentially, or your exhaust. And when these fail, you get smoking on startup. And in worst case scenarios, if these crack or completely fail, you could smoke non-stop, like that old Mercury a guy had. And these essentially just sit like that, and they ride on the stem of the valve. And it scrapes the oil off, and there's a seal from the oil in here coming off of the rockers and everything else. That's why they call it an umbrella, from getting down through there into your combustion chamber or right into the exhaust side, which once it heats up, you're just going to have hot oil dripping into really hot exhaust, and she'll really go to smoking. So these are all hard as a rock. These are normally soft rubber, but sitting for years, this is what happens to them. They just become super brittle. So we're going to put new upgraded seals on as well, and I'm sure my new kit has different keepers, but I kept them all to the side for now. These are the tops to my exhaust valves. I cannot lose those. Important little guys. These actually spin on the valve. There's the keepers. These go to the valve springs. There we go. One down. Well, the guys got both of them disassembled now, and I did find this, which is going to be just a part of our smoking issue. This is what I was talking about. Big crack there. This one's even worse. So oil was dumping down both these valves and would have been smoking, and this was on the passenger side. But a lot of the same. Heads need a really good cleaning. Might lap these, haven't decided yet. So not to sound like a broken parrot with one leg, but we got three big pieces here if we're trying to save money. The heads can get very expensive, obviously the block, and then your rotating assembly or your bottom end. Would sure like to keep the connecting rod, pistons, and crankshaft if you're trying to keep the bill full together. We're going to push the oil pump aside. There's really no reason not to replace that thing if you've already got this tore down. We're just going to replace that for insurance reasons. They're cheap enough, they're 30 bucks. We'll put that in. So let's go ahead and take a look at the bearings and everything like that. And you could probably tell just by standing back here, seeing the copper goldish colors. Basically every single bearing here is trashed. I should kind of rephrase that. There's a big difference between trashed and end of life, and I would actually consider these end of life there's not a physical or mechanical failure here. They didn't come apart, they didn't split, they didn't roll, they didn't spin or anything like that. They are just flat out worn out, excessive high mileage, you know, heat cycles over 50 years, etc., etc. But let's take a close look and I'll show you some very obvious signs in different forms that your bearings are shot. Now keep in mind, almost every single bearing there is like this, they're coated. All the bearings are coated and there's a silverish coating on them. And you can see light scratches and rubbing and scuff marks in them. You're okay. As long as your fingernail can't catch it, you're fine. But anytime, I tell people this all the time, the easiest way to remember, anytime you see gold or copper, you have worn through your end-of-life coating, essentially. You're through your coating for operational purposes, and it's a warning sign that I don't have any more bearing to give. I'm out. So let's take a look at these. We pretty much have the gamut here on the table, and I'm actually happy we tore into this engine. There's a lot of good learning on this thing and great refreshers for myself as well. So I apologize if this is a little bit long-winded, but there's so many good opportunities here. I want to kind of go through them all. Now this one here is probably one of the better bearings, but see those spots right by my thumbnail? That's material that has ran through the oil system and has heated itself into this bearing. And there's scratches and scrapes in here, you can see right here, but I can't catch my nail on it. Still pretty smooth, but this is about as close as you can get to end of life. And those spots, I would replace that if you were doing any sort of inspection. If you were just to pop one off and let's see if this motor needs bearings, that's a yes. We have the same over here. See the spot, and we've got two grooves. So again, some trash went through this, and we can see some copper or gold coming through this. That one's a little more far gone, and that one's similar. Now on the piston side, ouch, there's that color. Can't catch my nail on it, but again, trash has gone through that. That's end of life. That's end of life. They're all pretty similar. This one got the bulk of the trash. This guy back here. You can see all those spots and wearing, and you can definitely see that there was some movement. See how the coating is still there on the top, but not here. So that would have been a slight ticky for sure. Over on this side, a lot of the same. That one has a fairly deep groove in it. That matches that groove. This thing is absolutely done. Now there's not hewing or anything that tells me this has had a bunch of heat. And we could pop one out and look at the back side. These get really dark brown or black or bluish. And we're not seeing that. And these are, in fact, original bearings. This one had a bad owie. Definitely catch my nail. That's an oil pressure loser right there. Trashed. Really bad. So, all the rod bearings, shot. Main bearings, a lot of the same. Front one, oof. Not looking hot. Wasted. Rear main, absolutely gone. So when you see this, you can already tell, not even looking at the crankshaft, you can already tell, well, where there was trash running through it, towards the back, and right up here in the front. Hopefully our crankshaft survived that. So when we go through here now, we can kind of line this up. That one actually looks pretty good, thankfully, for the material that's come through here. Not so bad. Just using my fingernail. Got a little bit right here. Little tiny bit. Which would have been this guy, I believe. And then we go up front here. And that's not so good. Not so goodly. Thankfully, where the mains were, they survived. I'm not worried about that. This got a little hot, but not too terribly bad. You could take this to a machine shop, but if you're on a shoestring budget, I'll literally show you how to fix this with the shoestring, and I'm not kidding. So we're gonna set this aside, and we'll polish this up and correct it with the shoestring, and we'll be able to save that. No issue there. Now let's take a look at the pistons for any side skirt damage. We're gonna talk about thrust here in a little bit, and thrust is the vertical side of a piston. There's a vertical and a horizontal. So we're looking on the thrust sides or the skirts for any obvious damage. And you could quickly just look at these. You'll be able to see right away. It'll be pretty abrasive wear marks, vertical scar marks. And see there, you can still see the machined horizontal. Not bad. That one's pretty boogered up. This is, I'll have to clean that. Well, this is number 3. The way I have it laid out. A little bit there. Ooh, one is got some pretty good reusable. You could take some Scotch-Brite and just work them horizontally, gently, even with some like WD-40, and just smooth it up to where you can't catch your nail on it or anything. And this one doesn't even catch. You could see it's got some damage, but it's not bad. Pistons, I'm gonna say plenty fine. I would have absolutely no issue reusing these pistons, but we do have a big issue, actually. A pretty bad issue. So it's now time to go look at the heart of the project, the block. And typically, you can dingle ball hone these, slap them together, and away you go. But again, this is a great learning experience because unfortunately, this one's gonna have to go to a machine shop. I can't fix it here, I don't have the tools. And there are a few telltale signs during disassembly, just using a visual inspection in your hands, that I was already able to tell before even measuring. This thing is beyond saving here at the shop. But again, it's kind of a blessing. I'm able to show you guys, here's how you tell. Can you just dingle ball it quick, or do you got to swing this off to somebody and have it dolled up? So let's go look at the block, discuss it a little bit, and then we're going to get some tools out, and I'm going to show you with just some basic tools how you can really get accurate measurements with your block, pretty close to even a machine shop, and help you feel confident just re-ringing them, or again making the decision if you got to go to a shop. So let's take a look here. Okay, so we need to determine if we can rebuild this block here in the barn, and I can already tell you the answer is no, but I'm going to show you how I determined that, and then we'll get some measuring devices out and try to back that up and confirm it. There's a handful of things that we're going to look at here. Obvious physical damage, vertical scarring or thrust scarring, ring ridge. We're going to look at taper, out of round, and oversized. And all of those together, and it sounds like a lot, but it's actually really easy, and I'm going to walk you through it. You can quickly, in about 30 to 45 minutes, feel very confident throwing this together, or you're going to have it in the back of your wife's minivan, hauling it to a machine shop, okay? So, first thing is ring ridge. When you have heads off, even if you're doing a head gasket, you can literally reach in here and just look and use your fingernails as a tool. Now listen. Hear that? That noise is ring ridge. There's a ridge in here that I'm catching with my tools. And that develops over time on every engine, every make and model. It's a high mileage indicator. With the rings operating properly in the cylinder bore, over time, regardless of oil pressure and the type of oil and everything else, these rings are going to wear away the cylinder walls and leave a ring ridge. Now, some of it's not bad. If you're under, say, 5 thousandths, dingle ball this thing, throw it together, you're good to go. And then above that, 5 to 7, questionable. 7 to 8, it's probably going to smoke a little. 10 and above, oofta. Why? You're not going to get much out of it, okay? And chances are, if you have ring ridge, you're also going to have taper, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Now, the first indication that I had, we're in trouble. Remember when I was disassembling this, I started making some comments about, boy, this isn't a low mileage engine, before I even saw the condition of the bearings. Reason I knew that is, when this was upside down and I was trying to pull the pistons out, they were physically stuck. If you were watching closely, I actually had to take this extension, slide it into the engine, and carefully put it on the wrist pin wing on the piston, and then take a mallet and tap this piston out of the engine. The reason being is the rings were stuck on this ring ridge. They were flared out, and I had to smash them past that ridge. So, red flag for me. Uh-oh. You know what I mean? Now, there's something called a ridge reamer. In that case, there's a tool that actually gently cuts the top of the cylinder away so you can release the pistons out of them. I don't like using those tools. I've seen cases where they'll slip or actually damage your block trying to just file away that. So I would rather, knowing we're replacing the rings anyway, just try to gently pound them out. Now, if you're wailing on this thing and they're not coming out, stop. You're either gonna have to get a ridge reamer and learn how to use it, or you may be better off just throwing the whole bottom end in a truck or your wife's minivan and take it to a machine shop and just say, help. I will trade tools and parts and labor, maybe some cold snacks. I was able to knock all of them out, thankfully. So that was the first indication that we've got a pretty good ring ridge on here. And it's pretty significant. So you can actually feel this, and I'm gonna show you, you can see it. It's so severe on this engine. And I'm gonna guess that it's probably 13 to 20 thousandths severe. I mean, bad. Normally you could just feel a little line, like a hairline, but this is pretty bad. So get over here and we'll take a closer look. See that shiny line? 2 of them actually. This one's really bad. Terrible. Really terrible. This one has some damage on it. Wasn't from me. Must be from the factory. Pretty interesting. That's probably the worst one. And again, that's just from the rings. Wear over time. And you can see where it's up, down at the very top. Okay, so we've got ring ridge. We're going to measure that here pretty soon, and I'm going to show you how. Now, the other thing that we can look at really quick is the thrust side of the bore. And we kind of talked about that lightly looking at pistons. You have to think of this as an X. This is a vertical line. This is a horizontal, obviously. So when a piston is on the compression stroke or coming up, the way that it's pushed, it's putting pressure up and down here and back here, here and back here, up and down. That's where most of the pressure goes. And looking quickly through these, it actually doesn't look bad. There is some vertical marks to be expected. There's absolutely no cross hatch left, which is just like a mesh looking or a bunch of X's. So the bores don't look bad, but they're going to be tapered, and we've got a ring ridge. Pretty good gouge in that one. And I can catch my nail on it. So A little deep to get out with dingle ball. Some pretty good scratches down there. But I don't see any obvious cracks. We know it didn't overheat that bad. Got hot a couple times, but it wasn't persistent. So that looks pretty good. So we've got some good news and some bad news with this block. The good news is the bores don't look that bad. I can't see any visible cracks or anything like that. But the bad news is we do have a ring ridge, but we're gonna measure that here in a minute. Now, if you get something off of, the interwebs or out of a field or tree row, it's probably a good idea to have this brought in and tumbled anyway, cleaned up, and they could do something called magnafluxing, which is the use of magnets and a special powder, and they drag it all over this thing, and they can find the smallest cracks that your eyes can't even see, and they will basically tell you that block is cracked or that puppy's bad. And while it's there, you can have them do this measurement too, and a lot of shops won't charge a lot because they're very proficient at it and they can get it done quickly. So we've got some tools that we're gonna need. We're gonna need a digital dial caliper and a dial bore gauge. So let's get those out, and then I'm gonna show you how to calibrate them and how to use them on an engine block. And you could do this on a motorcycle, ATV, whatever. If it's a engine, you can do this. I gotta soak these. Well, a couple tools we're gonna need here. One of them you just need around anyway, let's be honest, which is a dial caliper. Now, you don't have to get the digital flavor. You can have a Manuel one, but I can't see. So I like the digital one, it's got a gauge on it. This is $17 on the Jungle website. The very first thing that we need to do is calibrate this. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to calibrate, how come we gotta calibrate it? I bought this so I don't have to calibrate things because it's supposed to measure things and then it tells me what it is. But the thing is, in case this is dropped or anything like that, you need to calibrate this bad boy to make sure it's accurate before you even start this whole process, because 1/1000th means a lot on an engine actually. So, how do you calibrate these? Easy. Get a feeler gauge, say a 30 thou feeler gauge, stick it in here, boop, it should say 30 thou. Don't have feeler gauges, no problem. Grab a drill bit. No matter what it is. I like 1/2 inch because 1/2 of an inch is 0.5. It's easy, you don't have to do math. Run it in here. Come on now. 0.499 right there. So this is now calibrated, or I know it's accurate, just using something basic that is a fixed size. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this off because I never got batteries. The next thing you're gonna need is a dial bore gauge. Now, there's the fancy ones like this, but you can get, and this one's $60 out there. And this one was cheaper than that actually. It doesn't even have a brand. I think this one was like 35. And you can also get one that just looks like a T. It's a manual one. And basically, and that one's like 15 bucks. You drop it in the bore, you twist the thing until it touches, you pull it out, and then you take this and you're gonna measure it, okay? It works, but you have to do that 6 times per cylinder. Write all those numbers down. This way is a lot faster and simpler. So I'm gonna show you how to set this up, but let me first show you what the kit looks like and how to essentially operate this thing. Then we're going to set this up for our 302, and then I'm gonna show you how to use it, and then we're gonna hopefully not, but probably confirm that that thing is way tapered and needs to go to a machine shop, which unfortunately means we're gonna need pistons. So our super budget build just, but the good news is today, with like Silverlights or some of the other brand pistons out there, for a tank of diesel fuel in a truck, you can get a nice set of pistons and rings. So it's not the end of the world, it just comes down to how expensive are machine shops in your area. Thankfully for me, it's not that bad, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. First of all, come in here and look at this stuff. So here is our El Cheapo caliper with a 1/2 inch drill bit, so we can confirm that in fact this is operating correctly. 0.499, so 1/2 of an inch. And then here is our dial bore gauge. And again, this doesn't have a brand. This is the cheapest one I could find. But really easy to use this. There's a end down here. You pick which needle you want based on your bore size. You drop it into here and just screw this on. So you're lengthening this. And then all we're going to do, once we calibrate this, is drop it into the bore, and we're going to rock it like this. And we're going to be using this gauge to measure. It's not how much smaller the bore is than it should be, obviously. They're not going to shrink. It's how much larger. And doing it in a certain pattern is going to give us an indication of shape. Taper and out of round, or overall oversized. So let's first talk about what those are, then we'll get this thing set up. Pretty archaic. I got the CAD system out here. Hopefully this will help. Now this is what this engine block is going to have, which is what's called taper. Now the dotted lines is the existing, which would be a 4-inch bore. True. Now wearing down, like this one has by evidence of the ring ridge, eventually it creates a taper, or larger at the top than the bottom, particularly on the thrust sides, which is this side and this side. Excessive taper leads to out of round. Again, the dotted line is a perfect circle or a bore, and it creates an egg shape, meaning it's wider from here to here than it is from here to here, again due to thrust. Okay? And then we have oversized, which means oofta. All around, you've got way too much movement in here, okay? Horizontal and vertical, you got feller, there's issues. You got some issues. Measuring with the dial bore gauge, we're going to be able to determine what we have going on. So let's go ahead and set that up, and then I'm going to show you how to use that on an engine block. So what we're going to do here, and I'm going to guess to try to get us close, is try to find some of these pegs that roughly fit in here. Okay, so I'm going to put this extension housing on here. We need to be about 4 inches. I'm going to guess maybe this one. Oh, there was a washer on that. Spacer, come back here. Did I just drop that? Yep. Okay. Well, that looks too short. It is moving that gauge, but it is a little too short. So I'm going to put a spacer on here. Actually, let's go to the bigger one. What's this one tell me? Too big, won't even fit in the bore. Okay, so back to the little one with the small spacer. And we're not doing any measuring right now. We're just trying to get this to fit in the bore, and we're able to swing it up and down like that. I can move it up and down. It doesn't get stuck. It doesn't get wedged. Let me look at the gauge now. Gauge is swinging back and forth. So this is going to work fine. Okay, so now that we know this fits in the bore, we need to calibrate this. A Ford 302 has a 4-inch bore and a 3-inch stroke. So it's 4 inches around, and it moves up and down 3 inches. So we need to set this to 0 at 4 inches. So that's where our dial caliper comes in. So now we're going to take our caliper, turn this puppy back on, 0 it out, bring it out to 4 inches, right on the money. Get it as close as you possibly can. I happen to get 4 right on the dot. So I'm going to lock this in really tight, and then we're going to go over to the bench vise actually with this as well. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just lock this in to our bench vise. I mean, don't break it, just get it in there. And again, we can see we're at 4.00 on the money. Now, if you're unsure, you can go over with this on your bore and measure it, and it's going to say 4, but you can't measure in the hole. You can't measure down, and that's where this gauge comes in. You don't know what the bottom is. You can't get this tool down in there, right? So now we need to set this to 4 inches. And all we're going to do is put the pins in here and rock this back and forth. And where the needle is the highest, see, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down. We need to move the 0 to that needle point. Again, the needle is going to go this way and then kind of come back. We'll come in here and closer and watch this real quick. So get the needles in here. See, it goes that way, comes back down. Goes that way, comes back down. So I'm going to unlock this. We're going to move that 0. Actually, I think I guessed it right out of the gate. Nope, see? So let's go more. And this might take a minute, especially if you're uncoordinated like me. Be sure not to push this on accident. You're just rocking it. If you push it, you're going to get a false reading. Boy, just a titch this way, and I'm going to preemptively lock that. We got it. See how it comes up? Back down. So at 0, we know that this gauge now is 4 inches from here to here and 0 on this gauge. Okay, are you getting woozy yet? Might want to swing by the fridge, get a cold snack. So now we've used our calibrated dial caliber to calibrate our dial bore gauge. Everything is hunky-dory and locked down. Now we're finally able to go ahead and measure this up. Now I know this seems like a lot, but after you do this a couple times, this whole process we're going through only takes a minute, okay? You're just gonna have to trust me. Good, I'm glad. Let's wheel this out. Now I'm gonna get another piece of CAD software somewhere because we're gonna be writing down, I'm just gonna make 8 circles on a piece of cardboard and we're gonna write down our measurements. And if it's terribly bad, I'll probably stop after 2 or 3. If it's within spec, we'll just keep going because we want to look at the whole picture. Every cylinder is not going to be exact. It is scientifically and physically impossible for every single bore to wear the exact same. It just can't happen. So if it's good, 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 kind of bad, good, we'll keep going. If it's bad, terrible, worse, we already know we're not in shape, so why waste the time? Okay, let me get a piece of cardboard. I'll show you how to use this bad boy. So the first thing to show you is where we're going to be measuring in here, and there's 6 different measurements we're going to take per hole, and I've put some marker in here to show that. In any bore, we want something up towards the top, and we want to get this top one, where I got this marker, as close to this ring ridge as possible, because that's where the most wear is going to be. We're going to go somewhere around the middle, doesn't have to be exact, and somewhere towards the bottom. Ignore this part that doesn't have any wear. That's not on the part of the stroke, so it's not going to give you any sort of measurement. Instead of measuring it exactly where the marker is, we're going to do vertical. So here, here, and here. We're going to rotate the tool, and we're going to measure here, here, and here. So this way and this way. So we'll have 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to write that down, move to the next, move to the next, move to the next, and it is going to tell us a story very quickly about what is going on here. So if you look close at this gauge, see there right next to the needle, it says 0.001, that's 1/1000th. So each tick mark is a thousandth. So right by my thumbnail, from there to there, that's 1/1000th. So when we stick this in there, what we're going to be looking at is if it's true to bore, it'd be 0, which it won't be. it'll probably be 3 to 5 thousandths right out of the gate. But anything from there to there, we can deal with that. From 5 to 10, that's borderline, okay? 10 plus, as far as taper goes, not good, and our ring ridge. So how to use this is actually pretty simple. We put it in here, and we're lining this up with the block, flat, essentially. And we rock this back and forth. We go from not flat to flat and back down. When we get this flat in the bore, that's when the needle is at its highest mark. See it going back and forth? So right there, that's 9 thousandths at the top of this. So right out of the gate, not good. 9 thousandths vertically on the thrust side. Cylinder number, what would this be, 5. So what I'm going to do here is write down 0.009. And there's going to be 3 of them because we're doing vertical. So top of the bore, middle of the bore, and the bottom of the bore. And you can organize this however you want, but that's how I do it. And then when we do side to side, again, top, middle, bottom, I'm going to write those down here for my side, okay? And then we'll be able to start figuring out what the shape looks like. Just let me finish one really quick, and then we're going to take a look at it. So now I'm about, well, let's go here, about in the center. We're going to be rocking it here. And that is telling me it's about 7.5. We're going to do 0.750 there, okay? Now we're going to go down to the bottom of the wear mark. And clear as day, that's 7. So then we're going to come up here. So already you can see here, smallest to greatest. Okay, well, if this is smallest and that's greatest, that means we have a taper. Starts here, gets bigger. But to get the whole story, we got to do that again. But this time, we're going to go at the top, right here, and we're going to do the same exact thing. Okay, we're going to measure this out. Let me get these 3 and get those written down. See what we got. Well, as I expected, I did 2, and there's really no reason to continue at this point. It is actually pretty bad. So vertical on 5 over here, we started off at 0.007, which I would argue if everything was that, maybe we could get by. But then 7.5 up to 9. So it's got taper as we expected. Oddly, it's worse horizontally. 0.011 at the top to 0.008 to 0.006. Pretty similar numbers over here, 12 to 8 to 8, 9 to 9 to 11. So both of these have tapered this way and are actually worse this way. So they're oversized, both of them, but have more of a horizontal egg shape. And of course your eye can't see that, and that's why we take these measurements. So why is this important? Why are we doing this? They look round, why not just ring it and go with it? Well, again, depending on your needs, you could take this and just, hey, I gotta get to work. I gotta get to this car show, or in my case, years ago, we had to do power tour. And an example of ignoring all of this and can it work? Yes, it can. I built a hot little 307, put it in a 69 Chevelle, and we took it on power tour and did fine. We did like 2,400 miles. Ran great. It's still running. But you take a risk there. See, with this ring ridge, you could very slightly potentially catch a ring gland, crack a piston, something like that, and just blow it up. But most likely what's going to happen with something this oddly shaped, you're trying to wear in a new set of rings, right? They're not going to wear in correctly. They're not going to bite into the cylinder wall, no matter how much you dingle ball this thing, because of the odd shape. And that's going to lead to smoking. It's going to smoke, and you're probably going to foul plugs. Will it run? 10,000 miles? Maybe. But here's the deal. If we're gonna put a nice comp cam in this, and we're gonna put it into a shop truck, and we hope to drive this around the country and do shows like that, we should machine this block. This is a pretty good example of we're just gonna have to buckle down and make it happen. And the machine shop by me, for 15 bucks a hole, they'll bore this thing out. They're so busy, they stack these up in machines and let them run all day long, and they could care less. So I'm gonna throw this in the back of a pickup truck, run it down to the machine shop, and we're gonna bore this 30 over, and that is gonna take care of the ring ridge and our taper and our oval and our oversized, all in one shot. While it's there, let's have them put some cam bearings in. Why not? I don't wanna rent the tool for 40 bucks. We're gonna have them do it for 10, 20, 30, 50 bucks. Done, okay? Then we're gonna get back a nice clean block ready to assemble. We'll get some really cheap pistons. And then I think I'm gonna take them to heads, not to do head work, but just run through their machine. They can tumble them and acid dip them, and they'll come back super clean. I could sit here for hours with probably 30 bucks in brake clean and wire wheels and cheek pokers and all that, just to get them ready for reassembly and paint, or they're gonna toss them in a bath for a few bucks. So that's where we're at, is we got the parts, we didn't get so lucky. You don't always get so lucky on these engines. This one ran. It's just a crapshoot. You never really know what you're gonna get until you get into the darn thing. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this engine teardown and went a little bit deeper this time and explained why things are the way that they are, essentially, and how to determine if you could save your engine and build it at home, or if you're gonna need a little bit extra help. I'm gonna drop these parts off at the machine shop, and as soon as I get them back, we'll be back, and I'm gonna walk you through step by step on how to reassemble and build an engine right at home with some basic tools. Again, dial caliper, bore gauge, some plastic gauge strips, screwdrivers, a Leatherman, and a torque wrench. We'll have this engine built, spray painted up all nice, and we'll drop her back in this Ford, and that's down the road. Thanks guys for watching. Appreciate you so very much, and hey, we'll see you very, very soon. I have got a huge mess to clean up. Great. Perfect. Nope.